Hi, and welcome to episode 33 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Sunday the 22nd of May 2016. Welcome back to any returning viewers out there, and a big hello to any new viewers. We have a Ravelry group, and it is currently running a local knit along, so that's running until the 9th of July. And it encourages you to have a look at what yarn or patterns you might be able to find from local suppliers and designers. So pop by there if you're working on anything that's local to you, or if you want to get some ideas for what you could be working on. There are prizes for both the finished objects thread and the chatter thread, and we've already had 2 finished objects, so congratulations to those who have already finished their first projects and have entered those into the competition or the giveaway. We are almost at 100 Ravelry group members as well, so I'm doing a bit of plotting and planning about what to do when we hit that magic number. So if you're not already a member and you like to use Ravelry and get involved in groups, then please join the group and I'll see what I can do. One fun thing that happened this week was that every now and then I do a bit of a search for Finnish podcasters. Probably haven't done it for about 6 months now, and each time I've always turned up blank. And I did the search this week when I'd caught up with my subscriptions, and suddenly there was heaps of them. Probably about a dozen or so. And it seems like many of them are just up to their first few episodes. But it was amazing to be watching Finnish people chattering away in Finnish about their latest projects and the yarns that they're using. So there are some of them which are in English, and I haven't actually watched those yet, but I've been watching some of the Finnish language ones just to indulge my inner Finn. And so I hope you don't mind if I just take a few, maybe 30 seconds to say hello to them. I'll put in a translation below. So, tervetuloa kaikille suomalaisille podcastereille. On tosi kiva nähdä kaikkea, mitä te olette tekemässä siellä. Mä koitan tutustua teihin kaikkiin pian, mutta sanoisin ensiksi, että moi lankatarhalle, neulokerpalle, langan lumoukselle, rouva silmusolmulle, nonna neulojalle, tuille, ketunpesälle ja kiukkulinnulle. Olen katsellut teidän podcasteja nyt ja en ole ihan kaikkia jaksoja katsonut vielä, mutta mä meinaan katsoa niitä pian. Että tervetuloa ja olen innoissaan odottamassa teidän uusia jaksoja. So that was a little bit of Finnish in there, and hope that's okay with everyone. This week I thought that I would change the order of my podcast a little bit. I have a small finished object, but I'll leave that after the works in progress because it relates to some of my acquisitions. So for my works in progress then, I have finished the first of my block socks. So this is being knit for the Miss Click Clack Ravelry group for the tri-colour sock block cal, something like that anyway. So the idea is to use 3 different colours of Miss Click Clack yarns to make a pair of socks. So this is my first sock. I showed it off a little bit last week. Which way am I going? This way. So I have knit a cable that runs along all the way up the leg, and the way that I did that was with an intarsia in the round technique. I'm not absolutely and utterly convinced that the way that I did it was the best way to do it, so I will be playing around with the technique a little bit more, but overall I'm happy with the effect. I've knit a fish lips kiss heel, and then I've done a twisted rib up the top. Now I was watching a podcast last week, and I've completely forgotten who it was who was talking about the twisted rib, but they mentioned that they were struggling with purling through the back loop, which is something that I don't do. So to me, the twisted rib, and I don't know where I've learnt this, and I could be doing it completely wrong, but I knit the knit stitch through the back loop, and then I knit the purl stitch as a normal purl stitch, and it creates a twisted effect on the knit stitches. I'm not sure if it's going to be very obvious there, but that works for me. I think it creates a nice ribbing that keeps the socks up. You'll notice that it's a little bit wobbly on my bind off. I used a sewn bind off, and I was a little bit loose on it, but the sock stays up, so that's okay. I normally knit my socks cuff down, so I needed to get a little bit more practice in with my sewn bind off, or looking at other bind offs for a stretchy top of a sock, but I'll use it for the second one. So that's my block sock. One other thing that I was thinking about with this was that some people suffer from second sock syndrome, where they get one sock finished and then don't start the second sock. And I do sometimes put socks down for a little while in between, but I've never actually not finished a pair of socks. And I don't know, everyone's different in the way that they knit, but maybe it's the psychology of it, but I actually weave in all my ends when I finish the first sock, so it kind of feels like a finished object, and then it allows me to start the second sock, which is a brand new project. But maybe that wouldn't work for others, because once it's a finished object, then that's done and they want to move on to the next one. But that's how I think about it, that I finish one project and then I start a second one, I guess. Yeah, so that's that one. I have also been plugging away a little bit at my broken seed stitch socks, and I'm dropping a ball of yarn. So I showed my finished sock last week, and this is where I got to this week on the second sock. I have yarn ends hanging everywhere. So I'm up to doing the gusset. I've spoken enough about these over the last few weeks, so I won't go into much detail, but as I mentioned last week, it's working with other softer yarns. I'm finding it a little bit hard to use this Novita Nalle yarn, but I'm just working on it as the first knit of an evening, and I sort of did the ribbing one day, got halfway down the leg the next, then got down the other half of the foot or the leg the next, did the heel, and then I gave myself a few days break. So this week I think I will finish off the foot. That's that one. Next up is my breathing space. So I have gotten a little bit further. A lot of my time was spent on the block sock, but that's where I'm up to now. And it was so nice to see so many of the Finnish podcasters wearing their breathing spaces, and I don't know, it's nice seeing people wearing things on a podcast that you're actually knitting. I don't know, it somehow spurs you on a bit. So it's growing. I've still got a fair few stripes to go before I get down to the hem, but I finished the waist decreases. I'm knitting straight for a bit, and then I'll do some waist increases. And I've tried it on and I'm happy with the fit. I'm getting a little bit worried that the hem is getting large, but I've got the cables in there when I'm trying it on, so I think that sort of flares it out a little bit, and I think once it's actually off the needles it will sit nicely. I also decided to switch over to my second cake of yarn, which is definitely not noticeable with the grey in there. And I was talking last week about my yarn cake explosion, And I think it might be to do with the way that I cake up my yarn. So one person suggested I put the leftover, or whatever's left of the yarn cake, into a sock or something just to keep it together. But it seems to be that it sort of pops out the top in these clumps, and I think that that's probably to do with how I'm winding my yarn cakes. So when I wound this one up last night, I just sort of experimented with where I put my Swift and where I put my yarn winder. So my Swift was a little bit higher and sort of away from where my Swift was a little bit higher and further away than where my yarn winder was. Hard to describe, I should have taken a photo, but it meant that I didn't have to actually tension the yarn with my hand, which I usually do when I'm winding onto my yarn winder, my ball winder. And it somehow looks a little bit more compact, but maybe that's just because I'm comparing it to almost fell in my coffee. Maybe that's just because I'm comparing it to a cake that is sort of a third of the way through. But I think I'll keep on experimenting with how I wind my yarn cakes and see if that helps prevent yarn from exploding out of it and getting into a tangle. So that's that one. So still a fair bit to go, but I'm enjoying it and I'm looking forward to wearing it, maybe in a month or so. Which reminds me that before I did the whole move to the country, I had been working on my cardigan, and each time I look on my projects page on Ravelry, I see a poor photo of it without any sleeves on, and it's because it still doesn't have any buttons, and I need to really get a wriggle on. So perhaps putting it out there that I haven't managed to get my buttons on there yet will help make me do that this week, and then I'll get a proper photo put up on my projects page. So I have also been playing around with my local knit along project. So I'm planning to use these two balls of, which are in a tangle, Adagio Mills alpaca in a grey and a brown. So these are 160 meters for 50 grams, which sounds like a sport weight, but it sort of knits up as a fingering weight. And I don't know if that's because of the alpaca content, whether it sort of makes it heavier. Somebody out there might know. But I've been looking for patterns that would allow me to work with two different colours that are in equal quantities and that have only got 160 meters each. I put the call out on the local knit along chatter thread, and I've had some great suggestions, so I'm looking through those patterns and I'll sort of make my mind up soon. But in the meantime, I was just playing around with the yarns with a basic sort of shawl cast on, and I've got some little eyelets in there, and this will end up getting frogged, but I was really itching to play with the yarn and see what would happen. So there is still the chance it might turn into a two-colour triangular shawl that's just striped or something, but I really want to play with lace and do something a little bit more interesting. So the latest suggestion was to work on a cowl, and that's probably a good one because it's a lot smaller than a shawl, so my yarn quantity should be sufficient. So that project in its real form will happen soon. And then I have some acquisitions. So a few weeks ago I was talking about my spinning and talking about how I would love to spin up a very colourful braid. And then I saw an Instagram update from Fondant Fibre that they had some new braids in the shop, and I've never ordered from them before, but I've seen them on a lot of podcasts, so I kind of had to place an order. So I got this amazing braid, and to be honest, when it arrived, I had to go and look at what I'd actually ordered to remind myself this was what I ordered, because it looks a little bit different. I kind of expected it to be a bit more colourful, but based on the photo in the order that I placed, this is what I ordered. So I'm not sure what was going on in my mind at the time, but this is going to be a very colourful spin. It does have some very neon yellow colours, or fluoro yellows. It's going to be interesting. So this is 120 grams in the Deep and Meaningful colourway. It's superwash merino and nylon. I've never spun with, I'm not sure if I've ever spun with superwash, and I've never spun with nylon, so I really want to make a sock yarn, but I really want to also learn to spin a thicker yarn, so we'll see. But I'm looking forward to playing with that. I have no idea what all those crazy colours are going to do. I'm not sure about the prep that I should do for it, but it's going to be fun. So considering I was ordering from England, I figured that I should pop a few other things into my basket at the same time, and these are going to crinkle, so I will mute my audio while I show these amazing things. So sorry about the glare on the screen there, but yeah, so I've got some rollags and I've got some fuzzlings, and I've been wanting them for a long time, but yeah, some things are good to wait for, and I have to say they look amazing. I have no idea which ones I'm going to play with first. I don't know how I'm going to tackle them, whether I spin up some of them together or what have you. There's sparkles in there and all sorts of stuff. So there's just a truck going past at the moment. Yeah, so they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and there's something fun about the fact that they're all different colours, and I get to sort of play around with them and have fun. But within the package there was also one extra roll lag, so I had to start with that one. I'll try to put some photos in here of sort of what my process was. So I think I forgot to take a photo of the actual roll lag before I started, and I've got to start doing that, especially for my hand spun projects, to be able to put them up into Ravelry and remind myself about sort of the steps that I've gone through. But I used my drop spindle to spin up the roll lag, and it spun up really, really well. Very happy with it. I did look at a YouTube video from, let me just look at my notes, Jennifer Bogut from, it was on YouTube, and it was a video that was suggested to me by a member of the Give Me a Crown Ravelry group, so thank you for that. It just reminded me about some of the things that I should be doing when I was using my drop spindle, because it's been a while since I've played around with it. Because it was a roll lag, I wanted to try to do a bit of a woolen spin, so I was trying not to smooth the yarn as I spun it, and I don't know what, I wanted to stand and try the drop spindle, and thankfully I was on carpet because there's slate underneath, and I managed to drop the spindle a few times, but it's all intact, which is good. But I had my ironing board there, so I decided to put my fibre supply onto the ironing board, and it was sort of keeping it out of the way of what I was doing, which was handy. And at first it was kind of, it was a little bit difficult sort of trying to get into the swing of things, and then I realised that I might swap my hands over. So I don't know why I guess I was somehow doing it wrong-handed for me. I'm sure that there are some people who are right-handed and left-handed who do things in opposite ways, but for me to be able to hold the fibre supply in my left hand and to sort of use a spindle in my right hand it made better sense for me. It made better yarn. I'm right-handed, so I felt like I had more control because my drop spindle was wobbling a lot when I was using it, and once I swapped hands it didn't wobble so much, and part of that might just be me getting used to the drop spindle because I haven't used that particular one too many times. I then, once I had the single done, I wanted to ply it with something, and I had some leftover half-baked hand-dyed, is that the name of it? Half-baked hand-dyed? Pretty sure it is. I've got a photo of it anyway that I will put in here. I had some fibre that I'd bought from their Etsy shop last year, and I spun that up on my wheel and knit myself a pair of socks, which are the absolute warmest, coziest socks, because they're merino and they're hand spun. So I had some leftovers of that. I pulled out some of the fibre, weighed it up to match the amount of fibre that I had from the roll lag, and then I had some soy silk that I showed the other week that I picked up. So I got my hand cutters out and made some very, very, very poor roll lags. So this is one that was left over because I didn't need it. So there's some purple and some pink, and then the white of the soy silk that I sort of combined in here. I wasn't trying to create anything too beautiful because I was wanting to muddle up my fibres a fair bit so that I could do a woolen spin. What then? So I spun up that, and I noticed that as I was spinning it up, I noticed a difference in texture of the fibres. So while I hadn't sort of noticed the fondant fibre roll lag being in any way coarse or anything like that, the half-baked hand-dyed was just very smooth. So I think they're just a very different fibre content. So I spun up that, and then I plied them together. So I decided to ply them on the drop spindle because I've never tried that, and I wound up both the singles onto toilet roll holders, or toilet roll tubes things, and I put them on my box, which has got a couple of metal knitting needles which I use as my lazy Kate, and it doesn't have any kind of tensioning on it. So the plying actually got really, really difficult because I would end up with lots of singles sort of exploding out of the toilet roll holders, and it wasn't ideal. So I need to rethink that at some point. I think when I use that setup for my spinning wheel, there's enough tension from the spinning wheel itself just to sort of keep the singles in check, but with the drop spindle sort of going every which way, it just made a bit of a muddle. But I got through it and ended up with some yarn which looks like this. So I think it is thick and thin, but it is definitely fuzzy. When I washed it, I did dunk it into hot, and my colours on the video have just gone really, really weird. That might be a little bit better. Sorry about that. I dunked it into hot water and cold water a few times. Is it thwacking when you sort of basically abuse your yarn? I think I probably overdid it a little bit. The idea is that it would kind of felt the fibre together a little bit. And I think that I possibly over felted it a bit. So I ended up putting it back on the nitty noddy to reskein it, and that sort of released some of the felted strands from each other. I'm not entirely convinced by this colour combination. I think that both of the singles by themselves were beautiful, but I think combining the sort of pinky colours with the pinky colours has ended up very pinky. Maybe it's sort of muted. The fondant fibre was kind of muted, and the half-baked tan dyed was kind of bright, so I think it sort of muddied it up somewhat. And I think that perhaps I should have, with the fondant fibre rollag, perhaps I should have combined it with just a white neutral colour, and I think it would have been perhaps a little bit more special. But I am intending to knit a blanket square out of this, just to see how it knits up, and then I'll have some leftovers as well. I did test out, because I had to reskein it, I tested out my little pondering about whether or not a skein loses some of its length during the washing process. Before I had washed it, I got 67.5 meters. After washing, I got 64.3, which is about a loss of 4.7%. And yes, I'm reading that off my show notes. I could be completely wrong, because I wasn't necessarily being that precise with the way that I was wrapping the yarn. But yeah, almost 5% loss. And it could be because it's a woolen, more of a woolen spun than a worsted spun. I think that a worsted spun would probably lose less, because it's a tighter, or sort of a smoother yarn to begin with. So that's my little spinning attempt. I think I need to just have a bit of a think when I spin up the other rollags and fuzzlings, sort of trying out different techniques perhaps, and also just thinking about what I ply them with. I mean, I haven't tried a Navajo ply or a chain ply on a drop spindle, so I'll have to try that at some point. I should try plying on my wheel once I've done some hand spun, and I'll probably spin up some of them on my wheel as well. That's that. And I feel like I've been chatting for ages. That's pretty much it for all the crafty stuff. I'll have a bit of chatter at the end, but if you're not interested, thank you for watching. I've had no big adventures this week. I've done a bit of travelling around the area, but nothing too adventurous. It was more work related. I mentioned last week that I had planted some seeds in pots, and yesterday morning I spotted the first of my spinach seedlings, I guess they're called, or little bits of spinach popping out of the pot. In the afternoon there was some more, and the kale had popped out as well, and this morning there was more again. So if it's at all visible in the photo that I took, I'll put a photo in here. So I'm looking forward to having some nice vegetables. They're not vegetables really. There's a word for them. Can't think of it right now. But anyway, salad bits are available soon. None of my herbs have popped up yet, but I wouldn't really expect them to for a little while longer. And I'm just hoping that the weather plays ball with me until they pop up. What else? I spotted some kookaburras having a bit of a laugh the other day. So they sort of pop up generally in the evenings, and they remind me of monkeys laughing. So I'll pop in a video at the end. I'll mute it a little bit because they were incredibly loud, but you'll get to hear a little bit of the bird song that happens out here. And that's it. So if you are interested in knitting something local to you, or crocheting or spinning something local to you, then please pop by the Ravelry group and become a member if you're into that kind of thing, and come and chatter away if you want to be in with a chance to win some yarn prizes. And that's it. So have a great time doing all your crafts this week, and I'll see you soon.